So, while we were at Aiken State Park, we rode over to Eudora Farms.
And thank goodness there's video that we can show you to describe it, because we're laughing just thinking about it because it was hilarious, and it's beautiful. It was amazing.
It's a unique experience.
It's very unique to that experience was unique.
Yeah, we've seen a lot about it. We had to go check it out. We're going to share it here. You're going to want to see this.
It's funny.
All right, so for a little over a year and a half, we've seen several people, friends in the area.
Almost going on 2 years now.
Probably, yeah, going on 2 years now, that have posted about going to Eudora Farms.
But it's not Eudora Farms anymore. It used to be, it started out as Eudora Farms. Now it is Eudora Wildlife Safari Park, where more than imaginations run wild.
So, a little backstory. It had been Eudora Farms. They raised exotic animals that they would take to county fairs, petting zoos,
and even in movies,
and rent them out for movies and TV shows as props, if you will. The COVID pandemic hit, and all of a sudden he needed to feed his animals but didn't have any way of making any money. So apparently they had this idea and decided to act on opening up the farm where you could drive through.
So because of COVID, drive-through, you just pull up, you drive through the farm, you bought the food, and you
rolled down your window, and the animal came up and you fed them.
And so the animals, because they had been petting zoo animals and farm and maybe fair kind of animals, they were pretty well used to people and traffic anyway. But I think the last year and I'm getting on 2 years of drive-through traffic, and hey, these people in these cars are gonna hand me a treat, has made them super tame toward people in cars, and they're like, hey, let's just wander up to this car. And we're not talking like just some llamas like a petting zoo. We're talking all kinds of things. I meant to count like.
So when you pull up, there's a little
20 different things on their little.
There's a little building that you pull up to. You pay for the car full of people. I mean, pay by car, and you buy the food.
You have to really know. I mean, you have to GPS where you're going.
Yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere.
Because you're driving down the road, and we hadn't told the kids where we were going, and we're driving down, and Samir's like, "Are we at least getting close?" And Jonathan turns on a dirt road, and I was like, "I think so. Like, I think we're getting close." But it's in the middle of like no man's land, South Carolina.
So you pull up,
technically in Sally.
Yeah.
Salley.
Home of the Chitlin Festival.
A little tidbit of knowledge.
So you pay for the per car load, and then you buy the food.
And carload is a cool thing. I always said, somebody I was asking recently, and they only had one little one, and I was like, take some friends. Yeah. The more the merrier.
So you get the food, and then you go through this gate, and it's almost kind of like Jurassic Park.
Yeah, it's a big giant thing.
You go through this gate, and there's a cattle, and they're right there to greet you with two animals, one on each side, ready. Like, hey.
Yeah, there was like a giant bison or something.
I don't even know what
it was, but it was like, I mean, it was on the cattle gate, and I went to hand it something, and it dropped, and I realized it was a cattle gate, and I was like, we have to drive in to this thing because this bison's gonna be mad now that I like dropped his treat in the cattle gate. Clara was a little nervous to begin with. Sam Henry was pretty much freaked out from the beginning and through the whole time. Like, we first pulled up, we paid, and then we just rolled everybody's windows down, and we like started driving in, and he started freaking out. Roll up my window! And he was like in the floorboard of the car, like unbuckled out of his car seat, like in the floorboard.
It was. He struggled with that part. So as you ride around, there's all kinds of different animals. The emus were.
And the ostriches.
The emus weren't as aggressive as the ostriches.
The ostriches were aggressive.
The ostriches will flat out stick their head all the way in.
And if you're in a small car with a sunroof, they're coming in from the sunroof. So just FYI. Clara was a little nervous around, like, there was big like bison and what was the other thing that we saw? There was one that we couldn't decide if it was a bison or a Brahmin.
The Brahmin.
That just followed along beside. He liked her, and like if she rolled her window down, he was like right there.
So yeah, as you drive, and you'll see various different. You go through a wooded part, and there's some animals that kind of stay back in the woods.
And you kind of meander drive, and it really looks like something out of a whole nother country. When you first pull in, and it's this rolling safari land. I mean, it looks like something out of an African safari. And there's like a clump of trees over to the right, and there's some different, like the yak was up in there, and these other things that actually we couldn't decide if it was Adaxes or the Oryxes. They have these
twisty,
straight up horns that kind of twisted.
Yep.
They were super gentle and quiet. And Tim Hendry, that's probably the only thing he actually fed.
Okay. Yeah.
He kind of out my window, stuck a carrot out for that. The carrots are these long strips, so you can kind of just.
But you are not supposed to feed them with your hand.
It does say you're not supposed to feed them from the bucket.
Yeah.
But literally, if you stuck your bucket out that you just paid $4 for at the gate, that animal's going to take the bucket. We saw more people lose their bucket. Like the yak took somebody's bucket. The camels. I fought a camel off.
The camels will try to take the bucket.
They'll just take the whole thing. So what I did originally when we were trying to feed from the bucket is I took I took something and put the food in my lap, and then I put like one or two things in the bucket and stick the bucket out the window. But even then, they would just like steal the bucket.
Yeah, they were pretty aggressive. The camel was probably the most aggressive for trying to take the bucket.
The camel, I don't know if we got it on video of me being like, no, my bucket.
And some of them were really gentle. I was surprised.
Like the water buffalo.
Water buffalo was so sweet. It was just like, hey.
So sweet, and he just and then he just kind of licked the mirror and licked the car, and the kids were just enthralled. But I mean, it was this huge animal that like you see on the Discovery Channel, and he's just literally got his nose in your window like, hey, how are you doing?
The African Watusi was something I've never imagined. I don't think I've ever seen.
No.
They had the biggest horns. Those things
and they came out like the side of their heads. They were the most unusual animal.
Yeah.
And literally there's one time where one of them was just walking straight down the road, and you do have to be really careful. Like you're looking out your window and you go to let off the brake, and there's like a water buffalo standing in front of your car. Like you really have to be like, I'm on my brake until I'm looking out the front of the window, because the animals are not really terrified of the cars. So, I mean, there was one point that the Watusi was walking up, and its horns were as wide as the Tahoe. I mean, the whole front of the Tahoe was this animal's horns. It was insane.
There's some...
there was a ton of zebras, but you're not supposed to pet the zebras.
You're not supposed to pet or feed the zebras. I don't really know why. We had one zebra that really wanted to be fed, and
so sad. He
was disappointed that we...
It kept just making these sad eyes at me out my window, and I was like, they said I wasn't supposed to feed you. There is a refill station.
Yep, about halfway through.
They're very smart people with their product. So you're about you're driving through, and there's just a little barn. I mean, like a little snow cone hut, but for carrots and feed. But the ostrich.
There was an ostrich hanging out there.
Like,
hey.
Trying to get between the car and the feed
Tried
bin.
to pick off some food as
she literally like, are you ready? And she like gives him something and hands us the food, and he's still like trying to go at it.
Yeah, it was fun.
There's just so many times where we just died laughing. Like you'd be looking out Jonathan's window, and he's feeding an ostrich, or there's something happening over here, and then like a tongue from something would come in my lap to get. The camel came all the way through and tried to eat something off the middle console, and he was like leaning his head against me, just like, hey, how you doing?
The ostrich did the same thing. The ostrich came in on my side, and
but the ostrich, I think what makes, and I think the kids were nervous with ostriches, is the camels are like slow and kind of bumbering. The ostrich is like fang, and they're pointy and they're fast, and
they hit that bucket. That bucket will snap out of your hand.
Yeah,
really quick.
Where the camels are like, hey. Now, when the camel wants something, he's going for it, and he's got a big old mouth. But the ostrich was just so fast that scared him. The emus and the ostriches, and then there was a rhea that was. Really most everything was like, the camels wanted the bucket. They knew, the whole thing. And then when you got done with the drive-through.
Yeah, there's two little areas. The first one that we came to was kind of like almost like a fall
almost like a little fall festival.
Yeah, almost like a little fall
but there was
festival.
A whole goat area that you could feed if you still had food left, or you could buy more food. There was a bird, like parakeet, little
aviary.
There you go.
There was an aviary with some parakeets that you could go into.
We have traumatized Sam Henry with aviaries at Bee City Zoo, and he would like as soon as there was like saw the sign and he could see the birds, he was like, "How am I going in there? We're not going in there." It was like, "We're not going in there."
So they had concessions there, so you can get
and fair food kind of. You get a funnel cake, you get some Bluebell ice cream.
Yeah, you could get fried Oreos, soft drink, hot chocolate,
hot dog, kind of thing.
So, and then as you walked around on the other side, this looked really new.
Yes.
And from looking at their website, they're continually adding. They're taking this opportunity.
But you could tell just from the wood that it was brand new, like the signage and then the.
So they had kind of a walking zoo kind of exhibit.
It was like a zoo. I mean, there was like a big cage of something, and then you'd walk somewhere else. And we saw lemurs.
Yeah.
A couple different kind of lemurs, and then the other thing that was very intriguing was the bear cat.
Yep,
I'm sure it has a real.
What is it?
You've got a picture with its real name. It was like the weirdest combination of animals. It was like a bear and a raccoon, and it was short-legged,
but it had a tail like a monkey that could actually grab a hold.
Yes, it did have a prehensile tail, so it would like hang from its tail like a monkey or a lemur.
Very, it was a very interesting.
But it had this like raccoony nose and these huge whiskers and these little short stubby hands. It was a very odd thing.
There's also an aviary with
macaws, and parrots, and
that was really pretty. So you could almost touch them. I mean, I wouldn't suggest.
I wouldn't put my finger out there. I watched them crack a walnut.
I wouldn't. But
the lady, like they were coming. I mean, she was taking them down, and it was on her shoulder and stuff.
Yeah.
But
so that was. Then they had
they were beautiful.
A red kangaroo, where you actually walked up on a boardwalk and walked around. It was cold that day, so that it was inside, and because it was so cold, Claire was heartbroken.
Oh, she was so upset.
We did not get to see the giraffe. It was too cold for the giraffes to be out. They were inside their barn.
So under 45 degrees as the high for that day, the giraffes are not going to be out.
Yeah.
FY.
Yeah.
So our little 8-year-old who, like, literally giraffe is, here is the sheep, and the giraffe is first. And the giraffes were in their warm barn, which is good for the giraffes, and it's what the giraffes needed. But Clara was, I mean, of all the things she'd seen, of all the cool stuff she'd done, I mean, she was in tears over the giraffe. And
she was very disappointed. But you can't fault them. You know, it
no,
was cold,
of course not. That's what the giraffes are not built for 45-degree weather, and you know, 8-year-olds just don't understand that. But they're in that section with the birds and the bear cat.
The walk-through part.
Yeah.
So, all in all, it's a great experience.
Super
We
cool.
had a lot of fun.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, if you get a chance to go to Eudora Farms or Eudora Safari Park,
it's
well worth your time. It's off the beaten path. You got to go looking for it.
Yeah.
But it's worth doing.
And we are planning to drive to this and do this thing. It's not like, oh, what's that? Like Bee City Zoo. We were like, what's that? That's not this. No. You're not going to stumble upon it. But it is so worth
Absolutely.
It was $36 for our car. And the prices had just gone up February 1st. So that's probably what it would be if you're watching this in 2022. Yeah. It was worth it. It was so worth it.
Very, very worth it. Bring a camera. There's going to be lots of opportunities to take pictures.
Bring just a video and just roll with the video. But I mean, it was such a cool experience, and the kids still talk about it. I mean, like Sam Henry will tell people, we went to Eudora Farms, and water buffalo had black tongues. That's what he'll tell people. He won't tell people that he cowered in the bottom of the car the whole time.
Well worth checking out. Highly suggested.